Great. So first of all, let me begin by thanking everyone for taking the time out of your busy day to kind of attend this and learn a little bit more about our work. It saves us a lot of time because we can kind of talk about some of this stuff in one meeting as opposed to many meetings. And so again, we're very thankful of that. My name is Wizipan Little Elk. I am the CEO for REDCO, the Rosebud Economic Development Corporation. You know, we felt that it was very important, especially given how quickly the federal government is moving. You know, in the last several months around, you know, the federal recovery and, you know, kind of pushing a lot of kind of new federal initiatives that we kind of get on people's radar. And so what we wanted to do was talk a little bit about our approach to prosperity in Indian country. This is a place-based approach, but, you know, we think that it has lessons for, you know, many tribal communities. Provide an overview of the activities within our ecosystem. And then, you know, most importantly, you know, we view, you know, all of you as partners. And we think that there are opportunities for us to, you know, help achieve, you know, the federal government's policy goals, and then, you know, our overall goals around prosperity and development locally. Next slide. For those who may not know who we are and where we're located in the land of the Sichagu, which would be called the Rosebud Indian Reservation, its legal name, and we are located in central South Dakota. The current, you know, kind of main boundary of Rosebud encompasses Todd County, although our original boundary for Rosebud encompasses 5 counties. You know, and we're in the upper, you know, Great Plains area, and our traditional homelands are much larger than that. Next one. There are roughly 34,000 enrolled Rosebud Sioux tribal members. You know, we don't like to focus on this, but it is worth noting that, you know, from a socioeconomic perspective, you know, we have some of the highest poverty rates in the world, some of the lowest life expectancies in the world. You know, especially in the United States, some of the lower high school graduation rates and educational achievement rates, you know, and a massive need for infrastructure. So for example, our current need is we need 3,000 additional homes or living units right now. And we could go on and on about this, but I think that the really important thing is, one, there's a historic need. Like many communities in our area and many communities in Indian country, we operate in a system of historic and persistent poverty. However, we are taking steps, tangible steps to move forward and, you know, to pull ourselves out of poverty. And often one of the things I say is that we're happy and willing to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. However, we do need help getting a pair of boots. And I think that partnership with the federal government can really assist us in that respect. Next slide, Aaron. You know, when we've looked at you know, kind of different, you know, opportunities, you know, we've been designated as, you know, Hubzone, you know, we looked at being an opportunity zone and, you know, looked at all kinds of opportunities. But again, we think that we're an area and a group that is very ripe and ready for, you know, much larger investments and also like very intensive investments. Next slide. One of the operating principles that we have is both a duty and an obligation and a future forecast. And the Rosebud Sioux Tribal Constitution has a constitutional provision that we are to consider, develop plans and consider the implications of our decisions on the next 7 generations. Rather than have that simply sit as a aspirational constitutional provision, we at REDCO, what we've done is we've said, let's operationalize that. And so we have begun developing what we call our 7-Gen vision, which is a 175-year plan of prosperity for our people and our region. And we are basically asking a series of very big questions and very big and setting some very big goals. Where are we going to live? How many of us are there going to be? Well, how many homes are we going to need? What will they be built from? Where will our food come from? Will we have clean water? Where will we access our energy? What will our educational and healthcare systems look like? What will our relationship with technology be, etc. And kind of setting some big goals, looking at the data, looking at climate change data, so that we can get an idea of what things are going to look like in the year 2050 and the year 2100. Analyzing our population growth so that we can see what our much larger socioeconomic needs are. And so, for example, there are 34,000 enrolled Rosebud Sioux tribal members today, and 100 years at our current rate of population growth, we are going to be at 500,000 Rosebud Sioux tribal members. If we have a current housing need of 3,000 homes today, what does that housing need look like in 100 years? What does that say for planning for the delivery of healthcare services? What does that look like for the delivery of education services from an infrastructure standpoint? So asking some of these big questions, setting some goals, and then beginning to dial back that work so that we can make some smart forward-thinking decisions. And so we've dialed these back to some generational goals over the next 25 years. And we then dialed that back to 10, 5, 3, and 1 year goals. And so all of our work that we undertake for a year levels up to that. To think 7-Gen is also a process and more than just goal setting. And so as a process and as a set of values, what that means is that, one, we must always act in the best interest of our great-grandchildren's great-grandchildren. 2, we must make moral and ethical-based decisions. And then 3, we must embrace complex systems thinking. So for example, and we'll talk a little bit about this more later, I just reviewed a whole bunch of ecological data from one of our projects where we have buffalo. And we're looking at analyzing 87 points of ecological data in order to make good decisions around best practices and management for that particular buffalo herd, all with the longer term goal that we want this buffalo herd to be around for our the great grandchildren of our great grandchildren. And we need to make sure that the decisions we're making are in their best interests. And then always making decisions based on ethics and based on morals, and never compromising on those values. Next slide. Well, that provides kind of a larger context and a way of approaching our work. We have developed a place-based approach that we think is we've developed over the last several years. So REDCO has been the kind of primary entity. Rosebud Economic Development Corporation, like other successful tribal corporations, we are owned by the Rosebud Sioux tribes. I always say we have 34,000 shareholders, governed by an independent board of directors. And our primary purpose when we were established a little over 20 years ago was to serve as the economic arm and entity of the Rosebud Sioux tribe. And so much of our work, again, very similar to other tribal corporations, is around managing and developing subsidiary businesses and enterprises in order to one, create jobs, two, stimulate and grow and strengthen the local economy, and then three, to generate revenue that we can then reinvest back into our community and back into our region. So we own and manage 14 subsidiary businesses that are in various stages of development and that operate on and off the reservation in a variety of sectors. So for example, we have a propane company. That's not going to make a lot of money, but it provides an essential and valuable service locally in our area and serve to bust a monopoly that was detrimental to local customers and to the tribe. At the same time, we have a construction company. We do business on and off the res, and we have another company that kind of serves as a spearhead for our government contracting activity. It is an A certified company, and we have in Hubzone certified, and we have other companies that we can put into that process and are planning to put into that process to make sure that we're utilizing all the best and kind of business opportunities in front of us, and that we also do commercial work as well in different areas. We say that it's not enough to simply provide a job and employment for people, because at the end of the day, people are still working and operating in systems that have historically not worked for us. We've seen the results, in terms of kind of the persistent poverty. So for example, our minimum wage is $15 an hour if you work for us. We provide a full suite of benefits like healthcare, retirement, etc. And we have a fairly decent culture in the sense that it's a decent place to work, and people generally feel empowered and satisfied. We can always get better though. But all of that kind of doesn't matter if at the end of the day your kids are going to schools with low achievement rates. So for example, between 1% and 3% of all students on Rosebud test are not proficient in math and science, and the same numbers for language arts and reading and writing. If it becomes very difficult to build an economy under those conditions. We obviously have some of the lowest life expectancies in the world. And our access to healthy, nutritious foods is lacking, which has a huge impact on overall quality of life, etc. So our nonprofit, which is an official nonprofit, 501c3, IRS designation, is C-Chung with CDC, and we have 4 big initiatives: food sovereignty, health, education, and housing. And we have specific place-based kind of community-based programming in each one of those 4 areas that we're performing and working towards a much larger kind of systemic change, so that in a generation we don't have a housing shortage, that in a generation we folks are really focusing on mental health, preventative health, that we have access, full access to fresh, healthy, nutritious food, and that our language is really based in our education systems. So our food sovereignty initiative was recently recognized by the Rockefeller Foundation as one of the 10 most innovative kind of food programs in the world. Our health initiative is really focused on providing social emotional intelligence and health training. We opened a Lakota language immersion school last year, and next school year we'll be adding another class. And our housing initiative is spearheading a multi-use development we'll talk about later. We also strongly believe that if REDCO owns and operates all the businesses on the reservation, that's a bad thing, and that we really need to assist and help people in 2 areas. One is asset building, and then the second is skill building. is very important, especially given the long federal policy history in our area, that we help people with that pair of boots, and to be able to get some of those assets and build their own personal and family assets. And we see those as two things. One is housing, to the ability to own your own home, and then two, the ability to own your own business. And along with asset building is the development of skills, skills around saving, and then skills around entrepreneurship. And so we have a native emerging CDFI. And then finally, we have a limited policy component, where we engage with our own tribe into, limited ways in other areas. So for example, we've undertaken some of the code development for the Rosebud Sioux tribe. We developed the tribe's hemp code. We have the tribe has a UCC, but we have an updated UCC that's pending review by the tribe kind of general council and tribal council right now. We've helped with in other areas of kind of general policy. So our ecosystem is, that working within those 4 areas, we believe that we can make substantial and transformative change on our reservation and in our area and in our region, and make significant impacts on people's overall quality of life, grow and strengthen our local economy. And again, it's much more than just jobs and economic development. It really is a holistic socioeconomic development approach. This is an approach that really, again, I kind of mentioned that the recent kind of term I've heard is a hub and spoke approach. That would in many ways fit exactly what we're doing, because all of our work is all of those 3 organizations work under shared leadership and shared management and shared vision. And so I serve as the CEO for REDCO, and really for all of those organizations, and in each entity and sub-entity has its own leadership, but everyone is working and moving in this kind of same overall direction, so that we're really taking a holistic approach. And you can kind of see, what that looks like: business, financial assets, community development, policy, and data. All of those work together. We were very pleased when we saw the priorities of the new administration, in the sense that some of those identified big priorities meshed very well with our priorities. Obviously, everyone in the world is trying to recover from the pandemic, and to do so in a way that creates long-term resilience. And a lot of times people have asked us, many times people have asked us, well, how's the pandemic impacting your work? And in some ways, we've said, well, it really hasn't impacted our work that much in this sense. Everything that we would be doing and that we need to do in order to create resilience to the next and recover from the pandemic, we were doing that work already. What the pandemic has shown us, though, is that our work is urgent. And so, we've moved up, 10-year goals and made those 5 and 3-year goals. If it was a 3-year goal, we said we need to get it done this year. So we were very pleased to see that was a big priority. Obviously, economic recovery is huge, and when we think of economic recovery, we're really talking about quality of life. And that when we're talking about a community like ours that has been in persistent poverty for a number of generations, economic recovery is we not only need to recover from the pandemic, but we need to recover from several generations of poverty. We also see that addressing the racial and social inequity has been a priority for the administration, and we wholeheartedly agree. one of the things that we really embrace is that, this idea that everyone is deserving of a good quality of life, and everyone is deserving of access to the American dream. And when there are systems that have been set up that have operated, for over 100 years that have prevented that, then let's change that system and make it work for everybody. So we were very pleased to see that. And then also, the climate crisis is something that is continuing to loom large throughout the world, particularly in the United States. And I think that, there's a lot of research that shows that Native Indigenous communities are being hit harder and will be hit hardest by the climate crisis. And so we're doing our part to, address some of those needs. But I think that Indian country can be a great partner in that, and, achieving energy independence, achieving food security, and managing our lands in a way that is sustainable in the long term. I want to highlight, kind of two projects that embody this kind of overall 7-Gen vision and approach, and the holistic nature of our work. One is the Woolakota Buffalo Range, which is a 28,000 acre regenerative buffalo range that will be home to 1,500 animals when it's fully stocked. We are starting year 2 of a 5-year plan to stock those animals. And we've completed phase 1 of that fencing. We're going to complete phase 2 of that fencing this spring. And this is one of those projects that has so many impacts. Again, I kind of mentioned that I just this morning reviewed some of the ecological data and monitoring that we're doing on. And so projects like these will have a huge benefit in restoring historic prairie land ecosystems, and creating healthy prairies that will serve to better capture carbon and to increase biodiversity. It will have an economic impact. It's already created some jobs for us right now, and that we think that there are going to be some ancillary kind of projects and businesses that are developed from this, including we just finished up a phase 1 of a feasibility study for a meat processing facility, which looks like it's going to be very promising to be able to serve our needs kind of locally and in the region. And culturally, and there's going to be there has been some very big cultural impacts in terms of making bison and access to bison a little bit more available to our community, and kind of the longer term impacts that's going to have on the health and well-being, and really talking about the spiritual and mental health and well-being of our community. That project is one that aligns very well with who we are and our way of doing things. And it took a lot of people and a lot of groups and entities coming together. The land is owned by another corporation of the Rosebud Sioux tribe, and we lease that land from that tribal corporation. We have a 15-year lease on that land, and if folks are familiar with leases in Indian country, to get a 15-year lease is pretty unheard of, and pretty unique. And they've also given us that lease at a competitive rate. We were able to launch this project because we've had amazing technical support from the World Wildlife Fund, which has, where they provided grant startup and technical assistance to do the feasibility study, and then the kind of first-year lease to get and gain access to that land. One of the things that we needed to do was let that land sit and rest for a year, because it had been not taken care of in the greatest way by the last group that had put cattle on there. And so we were able to do that. And then they've also helped us significantly from a fundraising standpoint We have also utilized the social impact investment framework. And so, we've taken out so far 2 startup loans, through foundations, and that have provided us very generous loan terms, and that lend itself to this kind of operation. And one of the biggest partners has actually been the federal government, and we've been so grateful and thankful to the Department of Interior. We were written into the Department of Interior's 10-year National Bison Management Plan, which basically allows us to access bison directly from the Department of Interior, National Park Service, and Fish and Wildlife Service. And so also another NGO, the American Prairie Reserve, has also stepped up and donated bison. So we received 100 bison from the federal government and 35 from American Prairie Reserve. And over the next 5 to 10 years, we will be receiving more bison through this. And then we've also brought the private sector and other nonprofits to the table to help as well. So, for example, Wild Idea Bison, which is a big, kind of humanely raised and harvested kind of industry leader here in South Dakota. We, really great to providing us with technical assistance, as well as Ted Turner Ranch Enterprises is a great technical assistance provider to us as well. So we get to access the experience and advice of what we would consider the largest and one of the most successful bison ranches, 2 of those ranches, in the entire United States. And other groups have kind of stepped up to help as well, as industry partners. And also other nonprofits have contributed to this. The Bush Foundation and the Turner Foundation have been 2 big supporters, in addition to WWF. A lot of people ask, why does it take this kind of multifaceted approach? And it's precisely because we are addressing, some historical issues, and that to start a buffalo project like this requires a lot of heavy upfront investment. Over a 15 to 25 year project, it will pay for itself, at least under the model that we've developed. But to kickstart development and to kickstart it, with the urgency that we need in our communities to, really begin addressing that persistent poverty, is incredibly important that we're able to do that and really jumpstart that. And I think that it highlights this idea that if we bring tribes, nonprofits, federal government, and the private sector, we can create historic projects like this. And my big goal and vision is that other tribes are able to do projects like this on an even bigger and grander scale. Next one. Aaron. Tied to this, food and agriculture is a big priority of ours, and so that this buffalo range is just part of a much larger effort around regenerative agriculture. And so we currently have 1,800 acre total, that after next year, all of it will be in organic production. And so our next step from there is to figure out how we're going to scale our farming operations to include additional acres, while at the same time creating long-term capacity for future farmers and producers, and growing and developing potential value-added products down the road that we can market and sell in our region. So far, we've not had any federal money or partnerships in that effort. And then one last project I want to focus on is called Keawakbala Woichakepi, or green development. Keawakbala means Turtle Creek. This is a 590 acre planned development and community that will serve as the kind of central economic and commercial hub for our tribe. and take a good dent or put a good dent in that housing need of 3,000 homes. We envision around 400 homes and living units, kind of mixed use and everything from apartments to multifamily homes, single family homes on this site. And so the goal and idea is to create a planned community that represents who we are, represents our values, with as much on-site food production and energy production as possible. And to kind of get into this development, you have a lot of homes, some apartment complexes, and then you have a lot of businesses that we're looking to grow and develop. We're currently right now engaged in the design of what some of those homes are going to look like. And phase one will include 10 homes. And so we're also putting together our capital stack and financing needs and exploring all the options in terms of how we want to actually finance the development of those 10 initial homes. Next slide. We also envision having a kind of large multi-use facility on there. We call that our Seachago Innovation Center. We've started the design for that. We have and we were looking to expand our farmers market to really make that into what I like to call our people's market, which will be home to serve as a business incubator, and putting a lot more businesses in there. Next one. And then also as part of this kind of phase one, we'll also include a commercial piece, which will likely include a gas station, kind of fast food drive-through, car wash, 2 additional anchor stores, and then the long-term kind of goal with this kind of development is the addition of many other businesses. We have identified the top 50 business opportunities using economic data for the Rosebud Reservation. We know how many jobs each one of those businesses will create. We're putting business plans to each one of those businesses. We know how much those businesses are going to cost to start and to build, how many jobs it will create, and what the tax revenue generated from those businesses will be. And then we can kind of pick and choose what strategy we want to use to develop those businesses. Is it something REDCO should operate? Is it something where we build a facility and lease the facility out? Or should we simply lease the land out to an existing business? Or do we build the facility, run it ourselves? Or do we build the facility and then work with an individual entrepreneur to start that business? And each one is going to have its own kind of unique strategy and metrics. And so we'll have a good idea of how we want to approach each one of those 50 opportunities and what our strategy is going to be and what the need is going to be. And so there's going to be a tremendous opportunity for investments in kind of the private sector entrepreneurship. And I think that, the federal government could really come in and help a lot. Especially with the infrastructure side for both the housing and for the commercial development. Next slide. Very tied closely to that is, work on our, food sovereignty initiative. And again, we look at all of these from a very holistic systems perspective. So I talked about some of the big agricultural opportunities around buffalo and farming. However, we also should be operating at the individual, family, and community level to promote self-sufficiency, healthy eating, and really getting back to our roots. Our grandmothers and grandfathers were very self-sufficient people, and that a part of a healthy community, really involves families and individuals working together. So we have one of the more robust community-based food sovereignty initiatives in the nation. In that picture right behind us, you see our geothermal greenhouse that is, serves as our teaching greenhouse. It's not a production greenhouse, but it's a teaching greenhouse with some folks there in our teaching and demonstration garden that we have. And we operate a fairly robust farmers market, one of the larger farmers markets in the state, actually. We have, programming around traditional and healthy foods, cooking, eating healthy, so it's pretty comprehensive, and our folks are doing some really great jobs. We also had a CSA, so there's a lot of cool projects, and I'd admit there. Next slide. I'd mentioned our education initiative. We started with a class of 9 kindergartners. We're going to be adding another class next school year. And this is a full-on Lakota language immersion school. Language in our area, we have between 500 and 550 conversationally fluent speakers on our, an enrollment of 34,000. Most of those speakers are over the age of 60. So we have about 10 years left if we're going to save our language. So we are the only Lakota language school on our reservation. And we really focus on language acquisition, identity, health, and academic excellence. And we just actually went through a school review process, last week or 2 weeks ago, actually. And I think that we're going to have some really good results come from that. But again, this is another area and opportunity where I think that, federal partnership could be really meaningful. Our health initiative, again, looking at policy and then, really focusing on, the social emotional health and mental health services, because those are root causes, cause of death in our area. You're looking at heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, etc., all of which are preventable. And so we're really focused on looking at root causes and not treatment. We have entities that can do the treatment, but let's really focus on those root causes to promote long-term health. Next. And of course, our CDFI, in all the work that they're doing, and they're continuing to do that work. One of the big barriers is, a lot of the CDFI money that has come down is for certified CDFIs. And that's great. We love that. We support that. There are some amazing examples, some amazing examples in South Dakota that are national leaders. But when we're still in our beginning stages, that's not so helpful to us. And so, we need to be creative in finding ways to help get them a little bit more support. Next slide. Touched briefly on our enterprise support enterprises, but I think that the federal government through spending, through 8A, through 638 subpart J contracts, and through better utilization and implementation of the Buy Indian Act, could probably over the next decade make a massive impact in terms of cutting and addressing poverty in our area and on other Indian reservations. So we want to be able to utilize all of those set aside programs. I forgot Hubzone, but we would include Hubzone in there as a way to create jobs, generate revenue, and then also to create long-term sustainability. We will utilize all grants and all funding available. But the ultimate goal is to become self-sufficient. We would love to be in a position someday where we're not reliant on grants to fund some of our projects and our innovative projects. Next one. So that is kind of who we are and what we do in a nutshell. I forgot to mention, we have around, I don't know, depending on right around 65 to 75 full permanent employees. During the construction season, that can get up to 115, 120 employees. And every year we're adding between, we add around one new permanent employee per month. And so we have slow growth, but it's steady. And we're going to continue with that growth. But in order to accelerate it at the need that we want, to accelerate it to a point that's actually needed to really address the long-term persistent poverty here in our area, we definitely gonna need some help. I talked a lot. I usually don't like talking. I usually like to listen more. So I'm gonna kind of end our presentation here, and would love to answer any questions, take recommendations, have discussion on how we can partner with the with the administration and with the existing programs, especially under a lot of the kind of new priorities that have been highlighted by the administration, and then also taking advantage of the opportunities coming down with the new relief funding. So if there are any, we can open it up from here.
I'll jump in, Weezy, and I apologize for joining late, but I'm really glad to see you. And for those who may be joining by phone, my name is Brian Newland, here in the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs at Interior. I've been on since right at 2:30, so I caught, I think, Weezy, the last half of your presentation, but it looks like you guys are really doing all the interlocking pieces and not just doing this at piecemeal with no strategy behind it. My question that I would ask you and your team is, what are some immediate steps or actions that Interior can take, maybe in partnership with other agencies, to help you move this vision forward at the moment?
Absolutely. It's great to see you, Brian. And thank you for being on. I think that there's some incredible opportunities around food and agriculture. The U.S. Department of Interior, helps to manage, 55 million acres of federal trust land in the United States. At the same time, really looking forward to hearing Secretary Holland's, some of her priorities. But I was on a call last week with Secretary Vilsack, and he mentioned that his priorities are regenerative ag, racial equity, and supporting Native producers. And so I think that there's some really great opportunities to use some of the resources and combine USDA and Interior to say, hey, and previously, so for example, one issue is NRCS says that they can't use their resources on federal trust land owned by a tribe. Well, hey, everyone's on the same team. We're providing we're doing some really robust rangeland monitoring on one of our pieces of land. Let's all work together to see how we can develop metrics for rangeland monitoring, and to do that in a way that will promote healthy rangeland management, that will address climate change, while at the same time creating opportunities for economic development. And I would always push buffalo as one of those opportunities, but it can also be done with with cattle, and with healthy farming as well. That would be one area. Obviously, I think from an Interior perspective, the Bureau of Indian Education could play a huge role in native language revitalization. I think that would be big. And then one area I seen today was the SBA announced its consultation with tribes to begin promoting what they call their Hub and Spoke Initiative, which is basically saying, and it sounds like they may be creating positions either internally at SBA, or else funding positions for organizations like ours to be able to have one individual who's kind of focused on connecting all the dots. And so, for example, what happens when we work with SBA to help access Buy Indian Act opportunities at the US Department of Interior, and using, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud, USDA rural development money to fund that program. Now you got three pieces of the federal government all working together in coordination. And so I think examples like that, I think they're infinite. But I think having the federal, having that coordination with people on the ground who can do that work, I think could be incredible.
Thank you.
Weezy, just one quick thing there to respond to Mr. Newland's question. One of the things that we definitely need to reach out to our brothers and sisters over at the Bureau of Indian Affairs about, and at Interior, is changing those leasing regulations, Weezy, so that you can get a long-term lease, so you can do some long-term planning. You can't do generational transformation with a 5-year permit or lease period. So that's one of the things we're going to be reaching out to you about, Mr. Newland, from the Farm Service Agency.
I appreciate that, Zach. And I was actually going to ask about our ag leasing regs under the BI's leasing regs, because it sounds like that when we did this under President Obama, we reformed the leasing regs, but we did not move forward with ag leasing reform, partially because we were already up against the clock to get it done. But I appreciate it. And just a note too, I appreciate the respect. My grandfather was superintendent here in our small town, and so whenever anyone says Mr. Newland, I always think of my grandpa. So please call me Brian. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. And one other thing, Weezy, take a look at the NRCS's recent Regional Conservation Partnership Program. They've got an alternative funding arrangement that's tailored specifically to the needs of Indian tribes. So we can help you crack that nut.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, Wizzy and everyone. Thanks for the comprehensive overview. You know, I've been working with you now for almost 2 years. I just am getting ready to go over my 2-year anniversary, and you were one of the first visits that I made out to Rosebud, actually. And I really appreciate our consistent collaboration and talking and getting to know each other better personally, but also as organizations. And so what would be helpful, just as a recommendation, as we move forward, when you were talking, I was thinking about, okay, your overview is getting so well refined. I mean, it really, every time, I see a little bit more about it, I'm like, wow. I mean, and you can tell the strategy is there. But what would be helpful to SBA, and I think probably to my other federal colleagues on here and your colleagues as well, is to kind of chunk that up into some more achievable incremental goals that also, so have that long-term strategy, but then also have like the what do you want to accomplish in 1 year, and 3 years and 5 years, and that's going to align more closely with what some of our objectives are too. So for the federal partners, like right now, what our objectives are, I guess more in the near term, at least in the next 4 years and maybe in the next 8 years, along with what the White House terms are, that's how our budgets and our goals are set up. So for SBA, we have the 4 pillars. We have the access to the training and the counseling. We have the access to lending, which means it's not just a smooth pathway to capital for small businesses, but it's preparing organizations and small businesses and lenders, getting everybody ready and for the magic to happen at the lending table. And it takes a lot to do that. And then the other pillar is, of course, that access to the federal contracting, again, working with small businesses and organizations like REDCO, but also with contracting officers to make sure that that's more of a smooth pathway as well. And then disaster is our final pillar. And so we have goals for each one of those pillars. And I think if we can understand more closely in the near term, like what some of your goals are, then we can align ours too. So there's that. Glad to hear you talk about that hub and spoke initiative that's coming. I was on a call about within the last month from headquarters with a national call on that. So more is following pretty soon, and we'll be more in contact with that. But we're just eager to continue to building upon the synergy and seeing where we can align our goals and really best serve you and your businesses on Rosebud and beyond.
Sure, really appreciate that. And one of the things go ahead.
Oh, hi. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Michelle Sauve. I believe our former Commissioner Jeannie Hovling connected us. I'm currently the acting commissioner at the Administration for Native Americans. And so I just wanted to let you know, we have a notice of public comment out. I saw that you're looking for funding for an emerging Native CDFI. And so that's one of the changes to the Native American Programs Act legislation that happened in December under the Indian Community Economic Enhancement Act. It changed ANA, it amended us. We have to put forward in our new funding announcement 50% towards tribal economic development opportunities, and funding those emerging CDFIs is one of those. So if you look, I'll drop the link to the notice of public comment in the chat so you can take a look at it. We expect our funding announcements to come out at the end of this month. And the other thing I wanted to mention is probably tomorrow, there'll be a letter going out for tribal consultation for the Administration for Children and Families. There's a lot of money that came to ACF, and some of it will be economic development related, but once again, this time ANA got some funding for emergency language grants. And so we will be consulting about that on March 26th. And then we will also, because we fund more than tribes, we will also have a listening session. So we'll get the word out about that. And so we would welcome you to participate in that, so you could give us some feedback about what we should do with that $20 million that we were awarded to give out to save languages. So I'm so glad you mentioned both of those. I'm extremely impressed with your presentation today. I think you have a lot of, so much bright future there for Rosebud. So it's great. Thank you for sharing it.
Absolutely, and want to really appreciate that. And kind of one of the struggles we had in terms of today was thinking about how much detail and how specific to go with our recommendations. And we kind of decided on an approach of, one, let's just kind of reach out and, kind of see who's going to be helpful here. And then also to just convey the idea that it's a kind of a larger ecosystem approach, and that we have very specific recommendations that we could drill down into each one of those. So we're going to really be looking forward to that consultation. We definitely have some ANA ideas there.
Hey, Weezy, Ted Bulow from Rural Development. Thank you for being on the consultation with the USDA and the Secretary and our leadership last week. You were on Thursday, right up to almost the very end. I know you had a lot of comments for everyone and appreciated the ones that were RD specific. But when Brian and Zach were talking about leasing, obviously there's a touch there with the housing needs. So we'd be really interested in doing interagency work around home site leases and how we can work better and more efficiently, whether it's HUD or rural development or VA or the Bureau, to help facilitate that lending. And I think where we have been successful on tribal trust land specifically is where we've been present and available alongside of the housing efforts, whether they be tribally led or tribal corporation led or housing authority led, and plugged into the coalitions. So we have had a little bit of success with native CDFIs in South Dakota specifically. I know you're aware of some of those efforts, and maybe some of that can be leveraged moving forward to to help at Rosebud. So thanks for including us.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. There no more comments. You know, we are butting up against our hour, and I know that everyone is incredibly busy, and I'm just, again, very incredibly thankful for everyone participating and taking the time to listen today. We definitely will be following up with everybody, and you know, we see this as the kickoff to just a much larger kind of partnership, federal partnership conversation, and that, you know, as each of you and, you know, move forward with your work, know that you have a ready and willing partner on the ground that can, you know, work hand in hand with everybody and to implement some of those larger policy goals, while at the same time, you know, really doing some great and amazing, meaningful work in a local community. So with that, I will let everyone go. But again, I just want to say thank you to everybody, and we'll be following up with very specific recommendations for each agency.
Thanks, Wizi. Thanks to you and your team. It's good to see you too.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.